Welcome to another edition of World Talks here on TVP World. I'm your host, Benjamin Lee, and please join me and my guest on this next interview. Now, a recent Financial Times report revealed that the United States has been quietly providing Ukraine with intelligence to support long-range strikes on Russian energy infrastructure, guiding Kyiv's precision operations deep inside Russian territory. The revelation showcases how U.S. support is becoming more targeted and assertive, but raises key questions about deterrence, escalation, as well as long-term strategy. Joining us today on TVP World to weigh in on implications is Korewa, Director of the Atlantic Council's Warsaw office, a leading voice on transatlantic security and U.S. engagement in Eastern Europe. Hello and welcome to TVP World.
Thanks for having me back.
So about this Financial Times revelation, how significant is it? Does this mark a shift in how U.S. is engaging militarily with this conflict?
Well, as per the reporting, this has been going on for several months, so this is not something that's entirely new, but apparently it's been going on for a while. Presumably, I mean, I don't know exactly from what date, but any hopes that the U.S. administration may have had that the summit in Alaska was going to lead to any significant breakthrough was pretty quickly shown that was a fool's errand. Now, what is significant about this is that compared to, say, last year, I mean, this is Ukrainians hitting Russian oil refineries is nothing new. That we saw that last year, but compared to that, we are seeing that the Ukrainians are able to hit refineries that are further away. I mean, as far as Volgograd, I mean, that's obviously former Stalingrad, right? So that's far deeper into Russia than it was before. It means that the drones that the Ukrainians are producing can fly further. They can carry bigger payloads. And again, why this matters is that these refineries is basically where the Russians are where the oil that is exported is being refined. And of course, it's one thing we've already seen reports that in certain parts of Russia they've started limiting the amount of gas that people can get at the pump, and they're saying, well, this is in order to stop people from storing gasoline. Of course, that's not the reason. The reason is that this is starting to have an effect. The Russian government cares less about what people can and cannot do at the pumps, but the export is really significant because literally the entire war is basically being financed from oil exports at this point, oil and gas.
Right. You mentioned Washington's approach has been different since the summit in Alaska didn't really came into fruition. Do you think from Trump and Zelensky's first meeting to now, the Washington administration has changed its perspective, its approach, and where do you think things will be going from this point?
Well, if you can look at the latest meeting between Trump and Zelensky at UNGA, which the tone from Donald Trump is completely different compared to the infamous blow-up at the Oval Office in Washington. I mean, I think, and this has been reported fairly widely as well, is that that Trump has expressed frustration with Vladimir Putin and that this is not going the way that he imagined. Early on, Trump basically offered Vladimir Putin a lot of carrots in the forms of all these joint economic projects on oil drilling in Alaska, hence, the summit in Alaska and all that other stuff. But of course, what Donald Trump didn't realize, and I assume he has realized at this point, is that Vladimir Putin is not interested in economic prosperity. Economic prosperity development for the sake of economic development is not what the Russian government is after. They have sunk so much into this war that at this point, offering them olive branches and what have you, supposedly it's going to develop their economy, is not going to do the trick. What's going to do the trick is basically if the Russians understand that this path that they're on is only going to lead to further and further disaster for them. Unless the Russians are compelled to change their actions, they're not going to just do so simply because we're offering them building them golden bridges. That's not going to be sufficient. You have to show them again that continuation of the war is a potential total economic disaster for Russia, which of course it could lead to political instability in the country.
Right, so I think that connects very well with why they're helping them, guiding them hit a lot of these oil refineries. How hands-on do you think the U.S. administration is going to be when it comes to exercising its and be it guiding or even helping Ukraine's operational decision on some of these targets?
Well, I mean, I think that's not being on the total inside, but what it looks like is basically the intel sharing of. I mean, the United States intelligence has a pretty good understanding of what is where in Russia, and to put it that way. So all that they have to do is just share that with the Ukrainians, and the rest is up to them. I mean, the Ukrainians, basically the only message the U.S. should send to Ukraine is, as long as you are within the laws of armed conflict, you have free hands, and Ukrainians have stuck to the laws of armed conflict. So there isn't really an issue here. Obviously, if Russia commits an act of aggression, which they have, then they have to understand that everything that fuels said act of aggression, including oil refineries, is fair game, especially considering that the Russians are not keeping to any kind of laws of war whatsoever in Ukraine.
Do you think these developments affect, be it risk of escalation or any sort of miscalculation that could put Russia and U.S. in any sort of conflict?
I think we should abandon this talk of escalation a long time ago. This is not the way you conduct a war. I mean, again, the Russians are not putting any limitations on themselves as far as Ukraine is concerned. And as long as we are not entering into any direct confrontation with Russia, which we are not, because we don't need to. Like this talk of conflict between the direct conflict between US and Russia, I mean, the US does not need to directly attack Russia in order to get this thing, in order to be successful. All we need to do is to give the Ukrainians the tools, and then they will finish the job. And Russia is not capable of attacking the United States. I mean, again, think about where we are. The Russians can't even do combined arms. If you look on the army level, they can't even do combined arms operations in Ukraine, let alone against a country like the United States. In the air, I mean, their Air Force has played almost no role whatsoever. This is obvious considering that, I mean, in the Nordic-Baltic region alone, NATO has more Air Force capabilities than Russia does. And as far as their Navy is concerned, I mean, they just lost the Battle of the Black Sea to a country that doesn't even have a Navy. So, it's not really, this is not a country, the Russians are in no position to start some sort of global conflict with the United States. Also considering that, I mean, when people talk about things like World War III, well, one of the reasons why we call it the World Wars is because there were two coalitions facing each other. Yeah. Like the Russian coalition right now, yeah, there are drones from Iran and, the occasional soldiers from North Korea, but the only area where the Russians have a parity with the U.S., and again, parity, not superiority, is within the nuclear realm. Mm-hmm. And in the case of nuclear weapons, I mean, their main ally, the Chinese, have already read them the Riot Act, meaning that you don't even think about starting a nuclear war with the United States over something like this. So the Russians don't have a coalition which is prepared for a full-scale conflict with the West. And again, like the United States doesn't need to go into direct confrontation with Russia over this.
And so it does sound like if Ukraine continue up these strikes and Washington continues to give Ukraine the support it needs, that Russia will be put in a very, very bad position. Do you think at any point they will finally recognize that and allow themselves to come back to negotiation again? Or where do you see things going from this point?
Well, the Russians are sort of painting themselves into a corner because at this point, it's over 1 million dead Russian soldiers. Again, their economy has been severely damaged up to a point that it's completely dependent on China. But it's not just, I mean, again, we have to understand that this is a combination of many things, right? On the one hand, the United States, what the U.S. can do and should be continuing doing is exactly something like this. Where we have a major deliverable is the intelligence sharing, but we have to continue supplying with the weapons, continuing with the sanctions. There's a sanctions bill in the U.S. that should have been, passed the Senate a long time ago. But we're also seeing some movement in the European level with all this talk of confiscating the Russian assets in the forms of loans to Ukraine. I mean, more and more countries are moving in that direction. The Belgians recently, which they hold most of the Russian assets in Belgium, they come up with some sort of proposition. There are many things that are moving in that direction, and we need to continue to do that. We have to understand that this is not a quick fix. There is no quick fix to this. It is a long-term marathon. But the good news is, again, that the West is way stronger than Russia. It has way more cards to play. And as long as we play them, then Russia will simply be forced to. Because you can accuse the Russians of many things. I do that all the time. But they're not suicidal and crazy people. They are opportunists. They did this because they thought that attacking Ukraine was going to be cheap. Well, it's not cheap. And when backed into a position where they have to choose between losing Ukraine and potentially losing power in their own country, they will be forced to make the right choice.
All right, like I mentioned, West is a lot stronger than Russia. We have more cards to play, so to speak. But a lot of times it does seem like there is a lack of a political will to carry that out. Do you think that that's going to be a hindrance? And do you think that Russia has been banking on that when it carried out some of its actions, be it the initial invasion and hybrid warfare and kind of their blatant way of conducting things?
Well, yeah, I mean, the Russians always gamble or gambled on the thing that we lack political will to play these cards. And again, I fully understand that calculation because for a long time we've been sending them the wrong signals. I mean, take the example I mentioned, the frozen Russian assets, right? The Belgian bank that holds them, the message from them was that, well, the profits of this bank are Belgian, right? Because it's a Belgian bank. But now they're saying that, well, if these frozen assets are going to be given to Ukraine, well, then Europe needs to pay for the losses of the Belgian bank, right? So the profits are Belgian, but the losses are European. I mean, there you have it, right? It's a classic example of like short-term thinking. And this is, again, all of these ideas like, well, there are procedures for financial frozen asset, yada, yada. Like this shows, again, that a lot of Europeans, their mindset is still peacetime. Like all these rules and procedures make perfect sense in peacetime, but we don't live in peacetime anymore. We live in wartime. And it's not of our choosing, it's of Russia's choosing. When you have a situation that one side chooses war, well, then you have war, whether you like it or not. Right. Your choice then is, do you use the assets you have to prevail, or do you allow yourself to be defeated? I mean, that's the choice before us. It's that simple.
Do you think European leaders are slowly waking up to that fact, and do you expect more kind of assertive action going forward, be it the Russian assets, be it the supplying Ukraine with weapons, or even staving off of Russian energy?
Well, yes, we are seeing more and more moves in that direction. And particularly, I mean, if you're talking about weapons, for instance, the whole Ukrainian-Danish joint producing drones as an air defense system, that's a clear example of that, because obviously, you know, these Russian drones that are coming in, firing off Patriot batteries or sending up planes every single time is way too costly, right? So a drone-based air defense system is way more, it's simply way better for the needs that Ukraine has, and is also capitalizing on technology that they know of. What they need is resources to produce it on scale, and this is something that the Western Europeans can help with. Yes, again, the movement on the asset is another example. I think I just heard a very high-level Estonian official saying from the last meeting that he's very happy of the outcome. Well, considering that Estonia is one of those countries that has been one of the strongest backers of Ukraine, if they say that they're happy with the outcome, it probably means that the outcome was pretty good, right? So there's another one, and the fact that the United States, Donald Trump, from initially believing into possibly striking some sort of grand bargain with Putin, is realizing more and more that this is simply not in the cards, and therefore is moving more into the place of where he initially said during his inauguration that if he views Vladimir Putin as an obstacle to peace, then he's going to go after Russia, which, well, if he needed to find that out on his own, I mean, there were a lot of people that could have explained this to him already back in January, but if he wants to figure it out on his own, so be it.
All right, better late than never. Thank you so much for your input and insight. I really appreciate it, and thanks for being with us on TVP World. Cheers. And thank you for tuning into this edition of World Talks. For more news, update, and commentary, please stay tuned to TVP World.